The fitness industry has been arguing about rep ranges for decades: heavy weight and low reps for size, lightweight and high reps to tone. Pick the right range or leave gains on the table. After years of research, the science has finally settled the question, and the answer makes most of that debate completely pointless. This video breaks down what the research actually says about rep ranges for muscle growth, why the number on the rep counter matters far less than most people think, and the one variable that determines how much muscle actually gets built from any given set. By the end, there will be a clear, practical framework for how to choose rep ranges, including when heavier makes sense, when lighter is better, and the one situation where range absolutely does matter. Here is the finding that changes everything. Somewhere between 5 reps and 50 reps per set, muscle growth is essentially equivalent, as long as each set is taken close to failure. The load on the bar is not the primary driver of how much muscle gets built. A comprehensive review by Schoenfeld and colleagues examined the bulk of available research comparing lower load and higher load training. The conclusion was consistent. Anywhere from roughly 30% to about 85% of a 1 rep max produces similar hypertrophy, provided sets are taken close enough to failure. That range in practice covers everything from sets of about 5 reps up to sets of around 50. This has been replicated in multiple studies across multiple muscle groups. In one well-designed experiment, participants trained one side of their body with sets of 8 to 12 reps, and the other side with sets of 20 to 25 reps. Both sides were taken to failure. After 10 weeks, there were no meaningful differences in muscle growth between the two conditions, measured by both ultrasound and muscle protein synthesis. Below that range, the picture changes. Studies comparing 15% of a 1 rep max to 70% consistently find less growth at the lower load. There simply is not enough mechanical tension on the muscle to drive meaningful adaptation. Above the range, sets of 2 to 4 reps, the training stimulus shifts away from hypertrophy and more toward neurological strength adaptations. The studies showing similar growth between 2 to 4 reps and 8 to 12 also failed to equate rest times, meaning the low rep groups often rested 3 times longer per session. When time in the gym is controlled for, moderate rep ranges come out ahead. Within that 5 to 50 window, the rep count itself does not determine the outcome. Effort does. The rep range debate has been largely a distraction. Within a wide range, muscle growth is driven by how hard each set is pushed, not by how many reps it contains. So if rep range is not what matters, what is? And if everything from 5 to 50 works, why do most sources still recommend the 8 to 12 range? The answer comes down to one problem almost nobody talks about. The critical variable for muscle growth is proximity to failure, how close each set gets to the point where another rep is physically impossible. A large meta-analysis by Robinson and colleagues confirmed a linear relationship. The closer a set is taken to failure, the more hypertrophy it drives. Stopping 8 reps short produces meaningfully less growth than stopping 1 or 2 reps short. This is not a small effect. Here is where rep range becomes important, not because certain numbers build more muscle, but because most people are dramatically worse at judging proximity to failure as reps increase. A meta-analysis on this specific question found that people are reasonably accurate at estimating how close to failure they are in the 5 to 12 rep range. But above 12 reps, accuracy degrades sharply. By the time a set reaches 20 or 30 reps, most lifters underestimate how many reps they have left by 5 or more. What feels like failure at rep 20 frequently is not. This explains the gap between research and reality. In studies, participants are supervised, coached, and financially incentivized to push to true failure on high rep sets. In a real gym session, the burn builds, breathing gets hard, focus drifts, and the set ends 3 to 5 reps before it should. The bigger muscle fibers that only engage near failure never get fully recruited. The stimulus is smaller than intended, and the gains follow accordingly. That is not a problem with high reps. It is a problem with effort, and high reps make that problem significantly harder to solve. Rep range matters primarily because different ranges differ in how easy it is to actually train hard enough to matter. The 5 to 12 range earns its reputation not because it is magic, but because it makes training close to failure straightforward. The burn stays manageable, focus holds, and the set is over before the mind gives out. Knowing this, the practical question is not which rep range range is best, they are all valid, but which range belongs where in a training week? And the answer depends on the exercise, not the muscle. Different exercises carry very different stimulus to fatigue ratios across rep ranges. On large compound movements, squats, Romanian deadlifts, rows, high rep sets carry an enormous cardiovascular and systemic cost. A set of 25 squats is approaching cardio. Getting genuinely close to muscular failure without running out of breath or losing form first becomes nearly impossible. On these exercises, moderate rep ranges in the 5 to 12 window typically produce the best ratio of growth stimulus to recovery cost. For isolation movements, lateral raises, curls, cable pushdowns, the situation reverses. Going very heavy on a lateral raise is awkward at best and injurious at worst. Joints complain, form breaks down, and the weight jump to the next dumbbell is often a 25% increase, making week-to-week progression almost impossible by weight alone. On these exercises, higher rep ranges are both more joint-friendly and more practical for progression. Adding a rep week to week is far more achievable than adding weight. There is also preliminary evidence that mixing rep ranges across a training week produces slightly more total hypertrophy than staying in one range exclusively. The reason is not fully understood. It may involve the accumulation of different metabolites or subtle differences in how muscle fibers get challenged across different set durations. What is clear is that variety in rep ranges costs nothing and likely provides some benefit. Dr. Mike Israetel's concept of stimulus to fatigue ratio, SFR, captures this well. Whatever rep range gives the best pump, appropriate soreness, and manageable recovery for a specific exercise on a specific muscle is the right range for that context. For some people, biceps respond best at 15 to 20 reps. For others, 8 to 12. These individual differences are real and worth paying attention to over time. Use the 5 to 12 range for compound movements, where fatigue accumulates quickly. Use higher rep ranges for isolation movements, where weight jumps are impractical and joints prefer lighter loads. Layer some variety across the week to cover all the bases. Here is the full picture. For muscle growth, any rep range from roughly 5 to 50 reps per set can work, as long as each set is taken close to failure. The load does not determine the outcome, the effort does. The 5 to 12 range is recommended most often, not because it is inherently superior, but because it makes training close to failure the easiest and most consistent to achieve. Most people underestimate how much they have left in the tank on high rep sets. That gap between perceived failure and actual failure costs gains on every session where it happens. For practical programming, do the majority of training in the 5 to 12 rep range. Use 8 to 15 or higher for isolation exercises where lighter weights and rep-based progression make more sense. Add some variety, some heavier sets, some higher rep sets for the potential added benefit and because the training week feels better with it. On large compound movements, going much above 15 reps per set usually means the cardiovascular and systemic fatigue is outpacing the muscular stimulus. The quads are not what fails first on a 20 rep squat. The lungs and lower back are. The rep range debate was never really about the numbers, it was always about effort. Pick a range that makes it easy to train hard, then actually train hard. Want more fast fitness tips like this? Check out the next video here.